This here is another viewer's broken gaming PC, and this is the last episode of Season 6 of Fix or Flop. I cannot believe we are 6 seasons deep already. Thank you so much for your continued support. Of course, I would never wish ill will on anyone's PC. That's a surefire way to ruin someone's day, but I am impressed, for lack of a better word, at how many broken systems there have been over the years in the Orlando, Florida area. We have mostly successfully fixed, like 100 plus in this area, and that is just fantastic. I'm grateful that so many of you entrusted me with your rigs over the years, and I'm sure this playlist will stick around for several to come. It's more or less the bread and butter of this channel. It has become that, and I'm totally fine with that. We've been able to help so many folks. We don't charge for anything, of course, and that goes without saying. If you or someone you know has a broken PC, if you'd like a chance to have it fixed for free in this playlist, be sure to submit a form linked in this video's description. Now, about this system here. Why is it here, Greg? Well, it apparently turns on, it apparently loads into Windows, and then apparently randomly shuts down, like completely, dead as a doorknob. And, well, that can, in my experience, be a bit difficult to diagnose. And I'll be honest, when I first read this description, I wasn't even sure I wanted to reach out to the owner. Intermittent issues like these can be very finicky, very annoying to troubleshoot, a bit like a squeaky car that squeaks all the way to the mechanic shop, only for the mechanic to tell you that it's not acting up at all, right? Just a convenience thing. Oh, okay, it's just convenient that it's not doing it when I want it to, but when I don't want it to, it squeaks away. We've run into that same issue in this playlist several times. I don't want to waste anyone's time driving here, driving back, sometimes 2+ hours or more, which is why I insist that folks be local. But the owner insists that this power off procedure, if you could even call it that, I think it's just abruptly cutting off completely, is very, very repeatable. He says only a few minutes into just idling in Windows, something as simple as that, and the rig will completely shut down without warning. I think that's something we can replicate here. Let's jump right into it then. I hope you will stay with me. RexMD is an online telehealth service that helps men get real FDA-approved ED medications straight to your door. That's right, ED, something nearly 30 million men in America alone experience. And it's not something to be ashamed of course, merely something to address if you're worried about performance with proper treatment. Prescriptions aren't one size fits all, and RexMD provides various options to get it under control with a comprehensive analysis of symptoms, health history, and goals via a short quiz. From there, a US licensed provider will review and prescribe if applicable with free 2-day shipping. And that's that. Super easy. It's 100% online with no awkward in-person visits and chosen by nearly 500,000 men and counting. So take back control. Start your RexMD consultation today at rexmd.com/Salazar or via the QR code on screen to save up to 95% on ED treatment. To reiterate, it is important that we attempt to replicate the issue described by the owner. That will get us on the same page. If we see a symptom that doesn't match up with what they're describing, then we could be in for even more trouble. Could mean we have more than one issue to deal with. So let's attempt powering on. All right, and so far so good. As expected, all the fans spin. Looks like we have LEDs as well. Those all appear to be lit. Graphics card fans are spinning. So far seems pretty healthy. Now, you probably noticed cable management is not great in this chassis. I want to make sure that none of these dangling cables hits the fan atop this graphics card. The way this is designed, one is exposed to the above elements, and we're cutting it pretty close. But for some reason, we are not getting a picture out. Now, I've tried with integrated graphics via the motherboard. I've also tried the HDMI port on this graphics card. Not sure why we're seeing something different than what was described. Just quickly checking, physically his HDMI port looks okay, as does my cable, and I've been using this portable monitor for several episodes. I don't think it's just randomly kicked the can. All of his primary connections on both sides appear to be sound. This 12-volt high power cable in particular is notorious for being difficult to connect, but you can see this one is nice and snug. I'm thinking then that we're looking at a defective card side HDMI port. See, I asked the owner what he uses for discrete display out, and he said display ports. We have 3 of those and only 1 HDMI. Of course, I always use HDMI because that's what my portable monitor accepts, but if he was using DP this entire time, he might not have even known that his HDMI port was bad. There's one way to find out though, and that's to switch to DP to see if we do get picture out. I'm gonna switch to this panel because I don't have a mini HDMI to DisplayPort adapter. That's kind of a weird config, although I'm sure it exists. Let's see if now, while connected to DisplayPort on the card side, we get a picture out. I feel a little awkward here. Both of these things are covering me up, but we're just interested in a post, and then we can move on to maybe some stress testing, maybe some burn-ins to see if we can replicate that power issue. The other one is DisplayPort in. Let's try, maybe I was just in the wrong port. See if that does it. Ah, that did it. Okay, whew. I was getting worried there. Okay, so it looks like we just have a bad HDMI port. Now the owner also tells me that this 3070 Ti was purchased used. He says that he's not surprised that that port is dead, but it's not a big deal to him because again, he doesn't use it. With that out of the way then, I am inclined to leave the system as it stands, essentially on the home screen or the loading screen, whatever you call it, before we actually log into Windows. I don't want any program running, anything interfering with this screen, which is about as idle as it can really get while Windows is initialized. If the system still shuts down as is, then again, we'll know it's not program related, it's not load related or anything like that. We're looking at something hardware-wise that is probably defective. So now we wait.
12 o'clock midnight.
Oh, I was thinking the same thing. Actually, turns out it was just the screensaver, but just, yeah, went to sleep. This system has actually been running for, how long has it been now? It's like 9:30, so a little over 4 hours, and it hasn't turned off once. I am slowly running out of patience. I suppose we should load into the operating system and try, I don't know, running a few burn-ins. If we still don't see any issues, then again, I cannot fix what doesn't appear broken. So while we are idling in Windows, you can see in Hardware Monitor, our current core temperatures across all 8 are surprisingly low. We're in the mid to upper 20s Celsius. That is lower than I would expect, even for idle conditions. We will also run a stress test, probably prime 95, just a worst case scenario to make sure that these temps don't exceed the T-junction for this CPU, which again is a Ryzen 7 5800X3D. We'll also open up FurMark and make sure that we don't have any graphics card issues. But I will say so far, we've been in Hardware Monitor just idling for a few minutes. No power issues at all.
A few moments later.
Well, 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 would you have a look at this? So I just thought, I stepped away for a few minutes. I thought the system had just, gone into hibernate, sleep mode, whatever. So I went to click enter, nothing. I went to, move the mouse, just spamming a bunch of keys, nothing. There is no response from the system. There are still LEDs illuminated in this fan. So it looks like we're at least getting like 5 volts maybe. I think this maybe runs on 5 volts. Let's try clicking the power button again. I think it's just gonna restart the boot procedure. So that was the system randomly shutting down, and it didn't take very long. So that would be in line with the owner's description. I just wonder why it would have this issue when we load into Windows, but otherwise idle, but it wouldn't shut off when it was just sitting on the Windows login screen. My next instinct then was to throw up Prime 95, which is a synthetic stress test for the CPU. So the GPU here will otherwise be idle. You can see it loaded up just fine. All 8 cores were being heavily stressed, and we could confirm in Hardware Monitor that core temps were heating up as we'd expect, though they weren't very hot. This doesn't look like a temperature issue at all because under this load, we were only in the mid to high 50s. But then it happened. While filming this B-roll clip here, the system randomly shut down. This only took about 30 seconds of running that synthetic. So whatever we're seeing here is very repeatable once Windows begins, it looks like, stressing the system. But now I'm curious how the rig will behave once we stress just the graphics card. And here's the thought process behind this. If the graphics card, while being heavily stressed by FurMark, does result in the system randomly powering off, the same way the CPU did with Prime 95, I would be inclined to shift my attention toward common denominators. The motherboard, of course, is directly attached to both the CPU and the GPU, so I would scrutinize that fairly heavily. Also, the power supply, more indirectly, but these are the 2 most power-hungry components in the system. It wouldn't make sense to overlook the PSU in a scenario like this. If, however, the graphics card does not power the whole system off while being heavily stressed, I would be inclined to check the CPU more closely. Maybe remove the cooler, take the chip out, physically inspect it, and then possibly swap it with a known working one to see if the symptom persists. If it does, then at that point, I'd have to turn my attention to the motherboard and power supply anyway, and the PSU will still probably be tested with my inline tester. I might not show that on camera, but I just want peace of mind here because this does seem to be power related, especially since it randomly shuts down when we open Prime 95 after, again, only a few seconds. And just a quick reminder, I know you guys saw this on screen earlier, the power supply in here is a relatively new Corsair RM850X. This is plenty of wattage for this combination of hardware. It would be pretty unfortunate for this unit to just randomly give up the ghost so early in its life. I'm going to film this entire scene just in case it does abruptly power off before I can get firmware going. So we have a couple of programs that automatically pop up. I've disabled most of them. MSI Afterburner was not one of those. And the system does get noticeably louder when Afterburner loads. So I'm not sure if he's running some overclocking profile. It shouldn't matter here though, because I have force closed it. I just want to see how the card performs stock. And we'll also use this opportunity to verify temperature. So right now, it is chilling at 37°C, which is perfectly fine for, again, idle conditions. Let's go ahead and run the stress test here. Whoops. And see how we do. Now, I'm not exactly a fan of these VRAM temperatures. They aren't like egregious. I mean, this is high. A lot of people would cringe seeing anything in the 90s for VRAM. But this would be a simple fix. You could just swap to like some gelid solution or something. You would have a thermal pad replacement that would increase thermal conductivity and thus lower these temperatures. The GPU hotspot is a bit toasty, but it's not, out of the normal range, I would say, for a stock card. And same with the GPU temp itself, 83 degrees Celsius. It's on the hotter side, but there's nothing like super alarming here, and the system is still running fine. So I think the issue pertains to the CPU, not the GPU. We're coming up on 45 minutes now. In fact, just a little over that, I believe, and we've had no instability of any kind. Again, the temps are a little toasty for the card. It probably warrants some sort of like disassembly, replacing thermal pads, repasting, but I'll take stability any day of the week over like some toasty temps, right? So it hasn't powered off. That's a good thing. I just didn't really expect this. I thought it would. That means we likely have a CPU config issue, maybe something in the BIOS. I'll clear the CMOS just to be sure, though it sounds like the owner's already done that, just to make sure that there's not like a crazy amount of voltage being pumped to the chip. And I suppose we should also test the power supply, of course, to see if we're getting reliable power to the chip. In fact, let's just see, while this is still running, I'm gonna open up Prime 95 and see if the system will shut off now that it's running. Again, I think this is our issue. This will just double check that. Yep, there. That was almost instant. And so by process of elimination, we now know that anytime the CPU experiences any even mild load, the system shuts down. We don't appear to be running any manual overclocks. I do see we have XMP enabled. So the first profile to get our DIMMs set up in terms of timings and frequency, that isn't out of the ordinary, and that shouldn't be the sole reason why our CPU is acting so unstable. And the BIOS version currently flashed for the X570 Aorus Elite Wi-Fi is 40G. We can confirm on Gigabyte's site that this is the most recent stable revision for this board. I quickly connected the 8-pin EPS and 24-pin to my inline tester, and everything here seems to check out. So where do we turn from here? I don't think we have much of a choice anymore. We're gonna have to go deeper platform side. Either the CPU or the motherboard is starting to act up. I suppose what I'm hoping for at this point is that we find maybe some sort of like debris, extra thermal paste or something underneath the chip preventing proper pad contact with the socket. You never really know till you get in here. And actually this is X57, so this is PGA. So yeah, maybe we have a broken pin, a bent pin, there's debris in the socket itself. I was thinking we were dealing with LGA, like the newer AM5 stuff. So that would be best case scenario, because if we clean that up and everything works, that would mean we don't have to replace anything, right? But if we don't see any problems here and we end up swapping the chip and then our replacement CPU is totally stable with his system as is, then it's likely his X3D chip is beyond repair. Alrighty, and out she comes. Really dig these Thermalright coolers. These like tower style ones are such great values. Here is our 5800X 3D. And how are we looking underneath? Well, pretty good, actually. I don't see any bent or missing pins. A bit of debris, but I don't expect any of that is hindering contact. Same goes for the socket, by the way, all clear on this side. So what do we do now? Well, we don't really have much of a choice. At this point, we have to pick either the CPU or the motherboard to replace, since everything else we've tested so far seems to be in working order. I don't expect DRAM is the issue. I'll probably test that off camera just to be sure. But if we had a DRAM problem, I would expect it to pop up immediately and not, several minutes after the CPU is under load. I'm gonna swap his 5000X3D since it's already out. A motherboard replacement is just a little more time consuming, and see if we can get a stable system under load with that replacement. For this, I'll use one of my trusty Ryzen 5 3600s. All right, so far we've loaded back into Windows. I just have one of the CP fans attached. Doesn't really matter, it's a 3600. It's not gonna be a big deal. I just wanna see if the system continues to shut off as it stands. So let's reopen Prime 95, and here we go. So everything's being stressed now. Again, only on the CPU side. We haven't touched firmware, so the graphics card is just chilling. We're trying to replicate the power off scenario we saw with his 5800X3D. So far though, don't see any issues. I keep moving the box around like this to see if the system's locked up at all. Sometimes that happens before a random shutdown, especially while under heavy load, but seems to be working fine for now. Well, what do you know? It's still shut down. Now, it is still possible for our power supply to be the culprit here. My inline tester wasn't testing this unit under load. The reason why it's an inline tester is because it's intended to be used while a power supply is sending lots of power to these primary components. We, of course, did not test that way. So what I'm going to do is take out the power supply cables. I'm going to disconnect everything. I'm going to leave the power supply in there, but I'm going to connect my own unit externally to all of the primary stuff and then retest once more, because that will actually be a slightly easier thing to do than disassemble everything in here to get to the motherboard, which is the only other thing we could possibly replace. It's definitely a messy test for now, but this should tell us without a doubt whether the power supply has anything to do with our power issues. And I suppose I wouldn't be surprised if it did, because it seems power related. Go ahead and log in once more and open up the same Prime 95 burn-in to try to replicate the issue. Right, and here we go. And recall, the only two components we've left to test at this point are the motherboard and the power supply. The fact that we saw the exact same symptom with two separate CPUs tells me that his 5800X3D is likely okay. And if during this synthetic here, the system doesn't shut off, if Prime 95 runs for, let's say, 2 or 3 hours without issue, and we can readily repeat that maybe 2 or 3 times, this is gonna take all night, so I'll probably be in a different t-shirt in a few clips, then it's probably safe to say that the power supply was the issue all along, and its symptom didn't rear its ugly head until it was under a sort of kind of heavy load. I suppose if it's powering off at idle too, maybe it has something to do with some programs automatically starting up in the background. I went ahead and disabled many of those, which is probably why it's only doing it when we run heavy synthetics now. But it is just, again, something to keep in mind. Sometimes a system could be under a temporary heavy load, and that could be enough to set off a power supply issue if one exists. I will say so far, while we've been filming this clip, no issues. So maybe the power supply did fix it. Oh, and I was in the middle of wrapping up this B-roll clip here, and the system has shut down. So yeah, this looks like a slam dunk motherboard replacement. For whatever reason, it doesn't want to play ball with either of our CPUs or either of our power supplies. And the motherboard is kind of the intermediary between the two sets of hardware, right? So it's the only thing we've not swapped yet. Oh my gosh, diagnosing motherboard issues can be pretty difficult. So I jumped right into it, removing all of the old components attached to the board. Of course, these need to come out before the motherboard can, which is why I try to avoid motherboard removals if possible, though we don't seem to have much of a choice here. But somewhere along the way, I noticed two discrepancies, two potential culprits for why we were seeing what we're seeing. Firstly, a loose screw. It was just kind of sitting wedged atop some of the lower headers, and I'm not sure how it got there. I'm not sure how long it had been there, but it was something that very quickly raised alarms in my head. And the other thing I noticed was an almost shorted addressable RGB header. You can see the D and V pins. The V pin is specifically voltage. I think power is just sent along that pin there. Those two were just about touching. There was a small gap between them, but this could very well close under heavy load conditions. When the case gets especially hot, metal expands a little bit, becomes a little more pliable. It's not out of the realm of possibility that this could explain why we were seeing what we were seeing. So my curiosity got the best of me. I decided one last time to throw all of his hardware back into this board to try for a post and a stable Prime 95 session after rebending this back and of course removing that loose screw. But yeah, it didn't want to play ball, unfortunately. I think this board is just dead. I don't know if either of these things we noticed was responsible for the way the board was behaving, but nothing I could do in the office could fix it. And so at this point, it just made sense to swap it out entirely. And in doing so, I admittedly jumped the gun a bit. I connected his graphics card, I cable managed, I reinserted everything into the case. This is not what you would normally do until you know for sure that this replacement will fix things, though in my eyes, we had already tested everything else. If this didn't end up working, I might be sending a fist through my wall. This replacement board, by the way, is from my own stash. I ordered several of these on Amazon a few months ago, specifically for Fix or Flop, and they have come in very handy. So B550 Gaming XV2, not a like-for-like model compared to his X570, but hey, I'll take a known working board, brand new one at that, over a defective higher-end chipset one. And when it was all said and done, the system thankfully powered up. The next thing I did was load up Prime 95, and I've said Prime 95 a lot in this video, but this is where the system continued to, at least previously, power off randomly. Let's see if it happens this time. Well, folks, it has been several hours, well into the next day here. Prime 95 has just been churning since, I think, earlier in the morning. It's almost 4:30 p.m. now, so yeah, several hours just running Prime 95 without issue. You can see the system's still very stable. And I think I'm ready to conclude that that other board was just bad. I don't know why. I don't know why the issue was intermittent. That symptom can be a very difficult one to track down, and that's why it practically took me 2 days to figure out. But this is with all of his original components attached to that replacement board. That's what did the trick. Wish I had a better explanation for you. At the end of the day, the most important thing is that his rig is back up and running again, stable, ready to play games, edit, whatever else the owner wants to do, without random annoying shutdowns. The only thing I can think of is that maybe that addressable RGB header did short something and cause some sort of permanent issue. Possibly that loose screw was involved as well. Maybe it shorted 2 different solder points somewhere lower down. But again, the fact remains, the board exhibited the symptom even after those 2 issues were rectified. And at the end of the day, I have to value my own time, my own labor input. It's just more economical to replace the board than to investigate any further. So again, I wish I had more to tell you. Even if I had the board level knowledge though, it's probably just cheaper, more efficient to swap it out, which is what we did. Again, your viewership is largely supporting these replacement parts that go into these owners' rigs. So thank you so much for watching. We are 6 seasons deep at this point, and it is just so refreshing to know that we can fix rigs like these without, going into personal bankruptcy or anything. The fact that these sort of pay for themselves and then some is super cool. So just very happy that we're in a position like this, a very privileged one, where we can help folks out thanks to you just clicking on this video. So yeah, thanks for that. Also, yes, one of these fans was missing for a while. I'm reinstalling it now because, well, I couldn't get to the 8-pin EPS with it there. So there we have it then. Thankfully, we can end Season 6 of Fix or Flop on a high note with a system that is going back out the door in full working order. I, again, was hesitant to even take this one on because of the quote-unquote intermittent issue and the nature of, well, how intermittent they can really be. Oh, it does it every 30 seconds, it does it every minute, it does it right after I power the system on. That's not always been the case, especially with this playlist. And so, well, I'm at least happy that it was not reluctant to reveal its symptom and that it was very repeatable, because it gave me a chance to test over and over with different variables, right? Swapping the graphics card, or taking it out at least, swapping the power supply, swapping the CPU. Because the symptom was so repeatable, we were able to run all of those checks, sort of like experiment with different configs to see what caused the issue and what didn't. And yeah, we end up with this result here. super fortunate that it wasn't anything worse, or that it wasn't multiple symptoms, because if this was in fact a short, it very well could have killed other things with it. So I consider myself and the owner in this case lucky. Thank you so much for watching this one, and thank you so much for, again, those 6 great seasons of Fix or Flop. Don't worry, season 7 is right around the corner. We already have several systems lined up by this point. They're more or less arbitrary, but we've been naming them this way since the beginning, and I don't really feel like changing that at this point because of the algorithm, and YouTube is like very, they won't hesitate to put your head on a chopping block for anything. So I'm keeping stuff the way it is just for searchability, SEO, and all that stuff. But I just wanted to take this moment here at the end of this one to thank you again for your continued support over the years here, allowing us to fix so many systems in and around the Orlando, Florida area. And with that said, again, if you or someone you know has a broken computer and you'd like a chance to have it fixed for free in this playlist, you'll probably show up on season 7 if you apply soon. Consider doing so via the link in the description. Thank you again so much for watching. My name is Greg. Thanks for learning with me.